industrial-grade gas used in a Belgian vegetable packing plant. The crowd quickly turned from desperate customers to an angry mob. Del and Rodney barely made it to the van before the first tomato hit the windshield. "Start the engine, Rodney! Start the engine!" Del screamed. The Reliant Regal coughed, spluttered, and then roared to life, screeching away from the market just as a hail of empty canisters rained down around them. Back at the flat, the silence was deafening. Raquel and Cassandra were waiting, their arms crossed. So, Raquel said softly, "How did the peak performance go?" Del sat down at the table, his lab coat torn and his pride even more so. "Well, we had a bit of a technical glitch. The Belgian atmosphere is a bit more robust than I anticipated." "You lost 5,000 pounds, Del," Cassandra said, her voice like ice. No, not lost. Invested in a lesson," Del corrected weakly. "And besides, we've still got the canisters. They're very durable. We could use them as doorstops." Rodney looked at his brother, and for a moment he felt a surge of anger. But then he saw the exhaustion in those eyes, the way his shoulders slumped. He realized that Del was just trying to get them back to where they were, to the glory days of the Harrison watch. "It's okay, Del," Rodney said, sitting down next to him. "We've still got the 44,000 from the game show. We're not broke." Del looked up, a small smile playing on his lips. "You're right, Rotters. You're right. And I've heard a rumor about a shipment of slightly damaged electric toothbrushes in Gravesend. They're sonic, apparently. Very modern." Raquel sighed and walked over to the kitchen. "I'll make some tea. And Del." "Yes, sweetheart. No more air from anywhere." "Promise," Del said, crossing his heart with a gold-ringed finger. He winked at Rodney. "But toothbrushes, Rotters. Everyone's got teeth, haven't they? It's a guaranteed winner." As the kettle began to whistle, the Trotters sat together in the heart of Peckham, a family built on dreams, disasters, and an unbreakable bond that no amount of Belgian sprout gas could ever truly tarnish. "Kushti," Del whispered, "Kushti, the Peckham Phoenix. A novelization of the Trotter Chronicles. Chapter 1, The Yellow Ghost of Peckham." The yellow three-wheeled Reliant Regal then rattled through the streets of Peckham like a skeletal remains of a decade everyone else had tried to forget. On its side, the faded lettering still defiantly proclaimed, "Trotters Independent Traders, New York, Paris, Peckham." It was a lie, of course. They had been to Paris briefly. They had never been to New York, and Peckham was currently trying its best to pretend they didn't exist. Derek Delboy Trotter sat behind the wheel, his rings catching the stray glints of a London sun that looked like it had been filtered through a greasy chip wrapper. He was humming the theme tune to his own life, a melody of seasons changing and tides turning. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," he muttered to himself, a mantra of the perpetual salesman. Beside him sat Rodney. Rodney, the graduate with 2 GCEs and a brain that was currently a chaotic blender of existential dread and marital anxiety. Rodney was looking at the dashboard as if it were a ticking bomb. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Dell asked, his voice a gravelly mix of concern and irritation. "You look like a man who's just found out his lottery ticket was for last week's draw." "I'm a bit nervous, Dell," Rodney admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "This bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's a documentary maker, right? He's not going to be asking me anything personal about my private life." Dell swung the van around a corner with the grace of a shopping trolley in a hurricane. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we? We're public figures, the trotters of Nelson Mandela House. But what about, me and Cassandra, our hiccups?" Dell rolled his eyes. "He's not going to want to know about your little problems in the bedroom department, Rodney. Though, strictly speaking, if you're having hiccups in the bedroom, you're probably doing it wrong." "I told you that in confidence," Rodney hissed, his face reddening to the color of a ripe tomato. "And I'm keeping it in confidence," Dell shouted back. "I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and what Cassandra wears. I've got more class than that, mostly." Chapter 2: The Interrogator. Justin was the kind of man who wore spectacles not because he needed them, but because they made his expensive degree look even more expensive. His office was a minimalist vacuum of white walls and overpriced Scandinavian furniture. He looked at the Trotter brothers as if they were a rare species of beetle that had accidentally crawled onto his silk tie. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Justin said, his voice dripping with the practiced sincerity of a BBC middle manager. "It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, the watches, the bottled water, the pre-war lead soldiers. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you." Dell leaned back, crossing his legs and adjusting his tie. He felt at home. Give Del Boy an audience and a chance to rewrite history, and he was more dangerous than a shark in a tuxedo. "How you started, how you became so successful," Justin continued, leaning forward. "But more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre." Dell blinked. "Oh, no, laboratory Garni. I don't use that stuff. It's all natural, this hair." Rodney groaned into his hands. "He means reason for being, Dell." "I knew that," Dell snapped. "I was just checking if he did." "Right then, Justin, where shall I start? Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney?" Rodney gave a hollow laugh. "Ordinary, Dell, our childhood involved hiding from the rent collector behind a sofa that was technically also being repossessed. Details, Dell waved a hand dismissively.